Okay? Now, to make it more clear for readers, we can also add a value amount on top of both of these bars so that they know exactly what percentage mastery each gender had on average. So we're going to look over here on the right where we have our formatting options, okay? We start with chart options. Underneath that is chart data, size, rotation, and ordering, and then chart colors, lines, and fills. We actually don't see an option to add values here, so we're going to double click on the chart itself. Okay. We don't see it there. When we click overall, and see, depending where you click on the chart, you're going to see different options. We see more than just colors and lines. We also see font and properties. Now, when I click on the actual bar, it's going to give us an option for labels. Right now, it says none. There are no labels on the specific bars, but one of my options is to show the value. I'm going to click OK, and you'll notice that what happens is it puts the actual average student achievement for both those categories there. Okay. So now we're looking at a pretty finalized chart. We have a title on it. We have our different categories here at the bottom, both with the sample size included. We've made it a bit more clear by including 72% and 77%. And we also see that our y-axis starts at 0% and ends at 100%. Okay? So for data set A, we're pretty much set. This chart, if you selected the entire thing, can remain in Excel. You can also copy and paste it into a Word document, which can be helpful when presenting your student achievement data. So that's our first example for how to make a chart. We're going to do essentially the same thing for data sets B and C, but we have a little bit different examples, and so we're going to play around with some different formatting as we do that. I'm going to close this one out, and I'm going to say save. Okay, and that was a new spreadsheet, so it's asking us to title that spreadsheet. Okay, we're not going to save, we're just going to close that. There we go. We will save data set A. Now we're going to open up data B. Now remember, we had two versions of data B that we adjusted in that first tutorial. So I'm going to go with data B corrected version. And when I open this up, I'm going to close my formatting palette temporarily. When I open this up, I see all of our data, again with objectives on the top, students going down the first column. And then we added the category of both sex and class period. So for data set B, we're actually going to break down student achievement data by class period. So here at the bottom, we've already summarized the average student achievement for each class period, and I've already added the sample sizes for each so that we're ready to go. Again, if we want these sample sizes to appear in our chart, we need to enter them in the original spreadsheet with the label that will appear. So next to class period 1, in parentheses, I have n equals 8. Our sample size for class period 1 is 8 students. I've done the same thing for class period 2, class period 3, and class period 4. Now for this one, I'm not going to move my data to a new spreadsheet. And we see here that we have a lot of numbers and information, so it's really important that we tell Excel specifically what data we want to appear in our chart. So I'm going to start by highlighting just these 8 cells, all of the labels and all of the data that goes along with them. I'm then going to go to Insert, Chart. I'm going to do this very similarly to the last one. Now I said that most of these bar charts or column charts is going to be our best bet. However, this one's a little bit different. We are looking at class periods, and a column chart would absolutely work to compare our class periods to each other. However, another option when showing progression through time would be a line graph. This would actually be a pretty interesting way to present our class periods because we'd be able to view student achievement data as we progress throughout the day, assuming that class period 1 comes before class period 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to take a look at creating a line graph. Again, we have 7 options of different graphs. I'm going to choose this one. Select Next. We're seeing a sample. Next, now we can title it Student Achievement by Class Period. Okay, the label's already there. I'm actually going to skip x-axis and y-axis because I think it's pretty clearly labeled already. Now again, it's going to ask me as a new sheet or as object in. We're going to do object in again. And we can move that right down here. So we're seeing an initial look. Now if we open up our formatting palette, we're going to see all the formatting options we did for the last one. Okay? So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to adjust the scale on the left like we did last time to show it starting at 0%. I double clicked. I'm going to go to scale. I want my minimum to say 0, my maximum to say 100. You don't have to do this, but if you want it to include 0 to 100, that's how you'd make the change. Here we see minimal differences. Again, why Excel automatically adjusted these. Okay. Some additional changes that we can make. here on the right that we haven't looked at previously. We're going to click on our chart. Down here we have chart color lines and fills. You can choose a theme. This is going to change the colors. And again, we see here on the right there is a legend that indicates what each is. We can delete this if we want to, just by selecting right there. Okay? Pretty easy. Once we've got the hang of how we select our data and begin making a chart, we now have a chart that can be copied and pasted into a Microsoft Word document or kept here in the Excel document. So I'm going to close this one out and save, and then we're going to move on to our last example. Our last example is dataset C. Okay, you'll see here in this data set we added class period as well as race. So in this one we're going to be taking a look at the race of our students and their student achievement. Okay, down here at the bottom we already input the averages using filters and formulas for each of the different races represented in our classes. I went in and I added the sample size for each. So you'll see after African American, N equals 9. We have 9 African American students in our class. After Asian, I have N equals 3. There were 3 Asian students in our class. So I'm going to go ahead and select the appropriate data that I want to appear in the chart, which are all of our labels and all of our data. Again, I will select Insert at the top, Chart, and I'm going to choose the chart that I want. In this case, a column chart or bar chart is definitely our best option. I'm going to select a 3-dimensional one for this one to look at something a little bit different. I'm going to say Next. We can do either rows or we can do columns. Now with rows, you'll notice that it shows up, the labels for each of these shows up on the right, but on the bottom you can't input the appropriate labels, which is why I prefer to do columns, where the labels for each bar appear right underneath with the sample size. Next, we're going to call this Student Achievement by racial breakdown. Okay, and the labels are pretty clearly there. I'm going to leave those blank again. And click Next. Now, this time I'm going to do it as a new sheet so you see what that looks like. And it's just going to add a new sheet to our spreadsheet. So it looks a little bit cleaner, and it fills up the whole spreadsheet with no lines breaking that down. Okay. Again, Series 1 is unnecessary. We have our labels right underneath the bars. I'm going to delete that to make this a little bit larger. Now, this one automatically showed up from 0% to 100%, so we don't have to change that. If we wanted to, we would just double click on it like we've done before, and I can actually change it if I wanted to start at 20%. I would say 0.20, and now it starts at 20%. Okay. You can also change the colors of these bars, again, by looking over here on our formatting palette, choosing a scheme, and you're going to see color difference. So if you did want that color difference, you can easily do that as well. Okay. This one cannot as easily be copied and pasted into a Word document. You might be able to copy the whole sheet. It's going to be a little bit larger, but when you insert it into the spreadsheet, it's a little bit easier to manipulate and move from one document to another. However, this one is easily printed as an individual page, where when it's inserted into the spreadsheet, it's not as easily printed as clearly as this one is. So some of the advantages and disadvantages to choosing to insert as a new chart into that workbook. Okay? So now is a good time to go back and check yourself and thinking about our objectives for this piece of the tech tutorial. By the end of this video, you should be able to select and manipulate appropriate data that you would like displayed in a chart. And secondly, you should be able to create and format charts to most appropriately display that selected data.